Okay, well,
we're live. Welcome everyone to this episode of the MDTV show. This is a special feature. And former politician. Need to turn down the volume.
I've done it.
Can you just give a little intro to yourself and maybe just
Fortunately, the quality of the sound coming through from you guys is pretty poor.
Okay.
There's a lot of interference, like static.
Okay.
All right, we'll sort that out.
All right, then let's sort.
Better now.
Maybe it might be the microphone. Just
Maybe it's using the wrong one.
Yeah.
Try again. How does that sound?
That's good. I can hear that.
Hello. Try that now.
Is Rachel clear?
How's that?
That's fine.
Good.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
Right. So this is good. I can admit people.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we've got a few of us gathered here.
Yeah. If I keep disappearing off camera.
And yeah.
I haven't got to keep jumping up.
Yeah, there's a text chat on this Zoom platform. If you can find it at the bottom of your screen, or it should pop up on the side. And there's also a function to raise your hand, I believe.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
That will be somewhere below or next to your name at the side. Just check it out to make yourself familiar with that. So you can either text chat if you're a bit shy or don't have the means to talk by video or audio, or you can just raise your hand using the function on Zoom and ask your question via video chat. Okay. So let's begin. We'll start again.
Start again.
Simon, over to you. Can you just give people a little introduction for those that don't know you or don't know much about you?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. That's very kind. I'm celebrating 10 years.
Yeah, pleasure.
I've been doing this for 10 years now. And it's been a very interesting road. I remember when I first started 10 years ago, I talked about my alien experiences and the experiences I'd had growing up in a sort of a family that was very steeped in the intelligence services. And then I became more involved with whistleblowers or people wanting to give me information, and so I began to move a little bit from talking about that to talking about what was happening on the earth and the battle, if I can call it that, between good and evil that's taking place. And so perhaps I've had an evolution, if you like, from 10 years ago when I came out with my story, and how others then have connected with me, and we take the story forward.
Yes, there's been a lot of activity just lately, and you've been giving updates every day, haven't you, about the latest iteration, which we don't need to even talk about. I think everyone knows about it, don't they? And everyone is affected by it.
Yeah.
Well, I created an organization called Connecting Consciousness. We now operate in 130 countries. We have something like 15,000 members worldwide now. And that's important that this organization supports each other during difficult times like this. And nobody pays an entrance fee. It's free to join. I didn't want to mix the point of people spending money on joining a club with the whole point about consciousness. So we have a voluntary organization that runs throughout the world nearly, and those people can communicate and try and support each other. So that's a good way, I think, for people who have a spiritual connection to try to find strength in what is quite a challenging time at the moment.
Yeah, I like the fact that you bring in spirituality and the more conspiratorial or political kind of outlook on things. You kind of bring the two We joined in your meditation, actually. There was a global meditation. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we did.
we
I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to you and to everyone who made the time to, you know, be part of that.
Well, meditation's a powerful thing.
Yeah, so it is.
It's, yeah, we were more than happy to take part. So.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've been posting a lot of videos and going live, you know, with streams, just inviting people to bring their experiences and their insights, and bringing some upliftment as well, and in reminding people that we do have power in our minds. We have power of, you know, to bring about change and, you know, create a positive shift. But yeah, getting through these times is a challenge, isn't it, for many people? Yes,
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear at the moment. Yeah, we're doing our bit to try and counter that with the chats we're having online and the videos we're putting out, to sort of see it as an opportunity rather than a catastrophe as much as we can.
Yes.
So.
Good.
So, update. Apologies, we couldn't watch all of it. We ran out of time, but you started by saying there's been sort of heated kind of conflict between China and America with accusations of this coronavirus being a bioweapon. Can you just expand on that for people that don't know about your updates?
I wasn't the only one, but when this first broke weeks ago now, I was very clear that this was a virus, and I became more concerned when other people were saying that there was no virus, it was just a complete trick to create a lockdown. Other people were saying it was 5G, other people were saying it was just a common cold. So, excuse me, I was quite relieved when Russia, I beg your pardon, when China claimed that the coronavirus was released by the American military into China. And the Americans have countered by saying that they are going to sue China for $20 trillion because the virus, which was in contravention of the 1925 Act, 1925, the League of Nations, which is a very early form of the United Nations, basically said that it was illegal to have a biological weapons laboratory. And the rule is, we know that all countries have them, but the rule is don't get caught. So China got caught, and to try to claim back money for all the death that's been caused in America and the money that Trump has paid out, you know, there's a case now going through the international courts at very early stages. But both sides, by default, are saying this is a bioweapon. Now that's a real step forward, because up to that point, nobody had said that it was coming from a laboratory. The Chinese had said that it was probably coming from an animal. And that's what some of the establishment scientists ran with, when we knew that it was a biological weapon. So that's what's important, that now, regardless of who's to blame, both sides are saying it's a biological weapon. And that's a game changer, because that's in the normal news. My own newspaper, a very establishment newspaper, actually covered it with about 3 sentences, that's all. But nevertheless, they covered it.
Right.
Yeah. How do we know that this isn't a smokescreen, though? I mean, there's so many different points of view on this. I mean, how do we know that this is just another smokescreen and there's something else going on behind the scenes beyond the news? I mean,
well, there is a lot going on behind the scenes. Absolutely,
yeah.
there is. But a smokescreen doesn't force countries to lock down. You have to have a real reason to force hundreds of countries to go into a lockdown. You can't just have a virtual issue, because somebody in some country will see through it. And you don't send, as President Trump has sent, a hospital ship, the military, the Navy, 1,000-bed hospital ship because of a smokescreen. So it is a real virus, and anyone who's in any doubt, what I suggest you do is you put gloves on and you put a mask on and you go to your local hospital, and then you just have a look, and then you can make your own mind up whether what you're seeing is a virus situation or not. That's the best thing that you can do. But you're right that it's given cover to both sides. The black hats, if we can call them that, wanted a lockdown. That's absolutely what they wanted. But they wanted the destruction of the United States economically, and they wanted a weakening of the Western world, economically. But they haven't got that because of the way things have responded. And the good guys are using the chaos of this situation to have a go at the bad guys. So there is a lot going on, but there really is a virus. Although what I've said in the podcasts is that whilst the infection rate is incredibly high, its death rate is very low. So it's very infectious, but it's not as bad as the Spanish flu of 1918 or the Black Death or any of those other diseases that we've had.
Yeah, seems to be blown completely out of proportion when you look at the death rates.
Yes.
So yeah, it kind of staggers me that anybody that sees this can't be questioning how blown out of proportion this is, and not be questioning what's really going on. It's just ridiculous, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like this. Like you said, the deaths are so out of proportion, and the reaction to it seems to be so over the top that anyone with half a brain has to sit back and say, "What's really going on here?" There's something more to this than it appears on the surface, or what we're necessarily being told through mainstream channels. So.
Well, I think the problem is that most people who are not awake and aware have bought into the vision and the idea, and they've known since childhood. So when the establishment tell them something, they automatically do it. But I think that there will be an awful lot of people who will look at what they're seeing and say, there's something wrong here, because the coordination that's occurred in Britain in particular, we're a very uncoordinated country. One hand will do one thing, another hand will do something else, but this has been remarkably well orchestrated. And so you can see that there's been a blueprint here. They didn't have to just create this on the hoof. They've had this in a book, shall we say, sitting there for a long time. And I think a lot of people will look at it and say, well, how have you got yourself so organized with this when it took 6 months to build a safe place for my child to cross the road? I think that there will be questions. Yes, I think so. And after this event has all calmed down, I think it'll never be the same again.
Well, I suppose the fact that we now know for definite that it is a virus will at least laser focus and will quieten down a lot of the conjecture and the kind of, it's down to 5G, it's down to this, it's down to that, which really is just a waste of energy, I think, when we're all kind of squabbling amongst ourselves as to what it is and what the cause is.
Yeah. So I would like to ask the question to you, though, for those that are skeptical, what makes us so sure that it isn't related to 5G? Because there's talk of 5G coming out in the places where this virus is most prevalent. Have you got an answer for that, Simon?
Of course. There are lots of places where 5G is not switched on, but people have gone down with the virus. If you switched 5G on, you would expect the whole street to get it. But you're not. You're getting a traditional virus type infection where one person gets it here, another person gets it there. The whole point of 5G was to weaken the population and to mind control the population. So what I do believe is that and in Wuhan there's a very heavy density of 5G antenna, that has weakened the population so that their biological resistance is less. And anyone whose biological resistance is less will more likely catch the virus. So what I believe is that 5G weakens the organic biological form. It is not the transmitter of the virus. If we want to go really into the realm of the very interesting, we can say that one of the aspects for 5G is to implant a fourth dimensional entity into a human body as a host. And that is the ultimate aim, but that may be a bit much for your listeners to hold the discussion on that level. So at the moment, what I would say is that 5G is very harmful to the human body, but is not the cause of this outbreak.
That's good to clarify that. Yeah, we know with 5G is, regardless of what its underlying motive is harmful to the human body. There's no dispute about that. Anyone who goes and does their research can see that people have been in front of I think it's Congress in the States, with presenting evidence about how it affects the body and causes depression and anxiety and illness. So that it does have negative effects on the body. So that's not just conspiracy theory. People jumping up and down in their tinfoil hats. So do you think there's a correlation between the two, though? Do you think there is some kind of orchestration between 5G and the virus, or is that just a happy coincidence that maybe the forces that be are using to their advantage?
Well, the information that I received as to how the virus was released has no connection to 5G. So if it was orchestrated, then I would expect the 5G operators to be hand in hand with those who were behind the virus, but they're two very separate entities. But what I believe has happened is that, being presented with that opportunity of the virus, those who were in control of the 5G then turned the damn thing up to full power in China. That's what happened. So they took advantage of that, but they weren't actually sitting around a table saying, you do this and we do that. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And from our understanding, from the reading we've been doing and been passed on to, this coronavirus isn't new. There's a new strain of it which has come about last year, or in December, January time. But the coronavirus has mutated, and that the virus is dormant in many people. If we do the test, that's in hospitals, or that's being sent out to people can see that that many people have the virus, but they don't necessarily show the symptoms. So perhaps as we've just explored, 5G just happens to weaken the immune system enough for the virus to take hold.
Well, David Icke's right when he says that many people have the sort of type of coronavirus, but the coronavirus, the coronavirus has really come from the SARS family, and so it's been grown in a lab. Even the establishment accept that the virus has a very long life when left on a cold surface, and they talk about stainless steel. And what's interesting is that its optimum life on a cold surface can be many hours, and that's far more than we would expect. But its optimum temperature is the same temperature as a fridge, which is 4 degrees centigrade, and that tells us all we need to know. That's what what's designed to live in. So that's also why it was released at this time of the year, because had it been released in the summer, it would have all been destroyed. Ultraviolet light kills the virus, and so those behind it always intended it to be used in the winter months, because the sun in most countries, not all, but in most countries, is reduced in its power, and therefore it would have had a greater effect.
Yeah, so perhaps one of the ways to combat it is to get out in the sunshine and
absolutely. I have a 400-watt ultraviolet lamp positioned on my front door, so when the post is delivered, then that can be bathed in the ultraviolet light. When I go shopping, put the bags in front of the light. That is one way of doing it. You can also buy torches, which you can use. Ultraviolet light really does have a good effect against this virus.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Well, a lot of people, particularly women, found that they have those ultraviolet light nail drying devices. I don't know if you're familiar with them. You put your and they are using that quite effectively. So they go shopping. I still say that you should wear gloves I think that's very important. If you don't, you must try and use some hand gel. Certainly, if you haven't got that, put your hands under the ultraviolet light as if you were drying your nails. Very useful.
Okay. Instead of washing your hands, do you think washing your hands?
Well, it depends what you're going to wash your hands with. If you're washing your hands with soap and water, then you are coming into the kitchen, and unless you can turn your taps on with your elbows, and last time I saw that's only in operating theatres and doctors where they have that, then you are going to be touching surfaces. If you're lucky enough to have a little bottle of gel, then you can do that before you come into the house, and maybe have a little bin outside the house to just put any tissues and things like that. The rate of transmission is far greater by touch than it is somebody sneezing on you. And it was the elite who got the information before the rest of us. You may remember that the elite were told don't shake hands before anyone else was told that, because they suddenly worked out that it was touching a surface and then touching your mouth or your nose that effectively spread it, not so much somebody sneezing. In actual fact, they worked out that you'd have to be within for 15 minutes with somebody before you had a chance of catching it. But if you just put your hand on a surface where the virus was and touched your mouth, it would probably take hold on you.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, going back to what you said about this being a very organized kind of plan, I kind of found it quite interesting that the coronavirus bill, I forget the exact name of it, to kind of be able to test people without their consent and so on and so on. It's 100 pages long, and it's just appeared. That kind of work would have taken weeks, months, maybe years. So
well, we have to be careful so we don't get shut down, but what we can say is that there have been a number of charities that have been running and have got a lot of money. Let's say, for instance, Find a Cure for AIDS. And there's a gentleman who is very involved with all that, and his name is Bill Gates, and he's the boss of Microsoft, of course. And he's very interested in finding the cure for AIDS, so much so that something like 80 to 90 billion dollars has been put into one of the foundations to find a cure for AIDS. And I always think it's interesting, these organizations that must have laboratories where they're growing viruses, and they're looking to see how they would affect people, and also people like Bill Gates, of course, have got a very strong opinion on humanity. It's not surprising that very wealthy men would like the planet all to themselves. So you could sort of say, the lovely planet, but it's just spoiled because people like you and I, you get in the way. So it might be interesting, if you were a very wealthy person, to see how you could thin down the population a little bit. So there are a lot of interesting side routes which are now becoming a little bit more in the sunlight, and just like the virus, they're beginning to shrivel up a bit, and people are seeing the truth.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit doom and gloom, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. We can start exploring this.
What's happened to our background? It's gone a bit weird.
It's gone light.
Yeah.
It's come back now.
Okay. Technology.
That was the Archons checking in, having a listen to what we're talking about. I think you're more than free to sort of loosen the reins on the spiritual talk if you want to.
Absolutely.
Simon, because most of our listeners are awake and aware. So I was very intrigued actually by what you said about this fourth density implant, and I would love you to expand on that actually, and I think probably quite a few of our listeners would as well.
Okay. All right. It's not widely known. A few people did know, and I was at a conference some months or years ago now that Kerry Cassidy was hosting, and there was a chap there who was doing a talk, and his talk was incredibly accurate, but unfortunately there was a big disruption in the hall, because people felt that there was a possibility that this fourth dimensional entity could have been brought to life because the talk was so vivid. And as I said, there was actually, I was a member of the audience at that one. I wasn't speaking till the following day, and that was quite an interesting debate. But what I can tell you is that the elite on this planet have, since the days of Babylon and before, controlled people, the middle management, shall we say, on the earth, through mind control. And as the years have gone by, that has become more sophisticated. So if we can think of a part reptilian, part demonic force that exists in the energy but wishes to become biological, and you know that Hollywood, of course, gives us information here and there, and you only have to look at the alien films to see what is being told to us. It is possible through 5G, I believe, to create an environment within that frequency bandwidth that a entity from the lower fourth can survive. And the experiments they are looking at is how you would put that entity into a person so that they no longer have to mind control people. If you had all your middle management in the world controlled, I say middle management, I mean people in very powerful jobs or positions, but the dark forces wish to control them so they don't make any decisions that go against the satanic cult that runs it all. So basically, rather than have to mind control them with all the problems that go with it, if they could place an entity, a demonic force inside each person, then they would have what we call controllers. These are super demons who would control so many thousands. So it's like a coordinator controlling a group. And this was the plan they were working for. I had the great privilege in about 2016 to be working to take out one of these key controllers with a very, very gifted individual. And we probably put the elite plan back about 5 years. So absolutely no doubt that they have both the technology, the will, and the capability to do this. And that's what 5G was partly for. It wasn't just for that. So yeah, it's not Star Trek. It's real Trek. It's here with us.
Yeah.
It's science that is here with us. It's just that unfortunately the science that we are shown is 25 to 30 years out of date.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, I've heard this. There's some theories or suggestions, mainly from sort of the psychic spiritual community, that there's an AI kind of race or system in place in the fourth dimension. And this has been kind of taken out, or that the queen, as it were, using the Star Trek kind of terminology, has been taken out. Does that have any bearing on what you're saying there about, fourth dimensional entities?
No, but it's different. The fourth dimension AI you're perhaps referring to, a very long time ago, an AI force was in space, literally. I can't describe it because I wasn't there and I don't understand that part of it. But it was what we would call an artificial intelligence. It wasn't an organic intelligence. And so when it connected with the computers on board a reptilian spacecraft, it automatically understood that here was an intelligence very much like itself, and infected those onboard computers. The reptilian race took that infection just like an ordinary virus, because that's what AI is, all over the place. So basically, AI is not just the threat of humanity, it's the threat of any organic living creature. When a virus is created, it's created with RNA. It is not created with DNA. And I mean, there are lots of people, unfortunately, keep talking about DNA, and it just shows their lack of, and I'm not being disrespectful, their lack of understanding.
Yeah.
The virus is a crystalline, it's crystalline in its construction. And therefore, as a crystalline subject, it is able to take frequencies, which a bacteria or a biological organism cannot in the same way. Just like a quartz crystal can take a frequency, and indeed you can run your watch off across crystal in terms of its beats and time. So it was easier for AI to affect a virus than it is a bacteria. And so it is not surprising that there is some aspect of AI with viral attacks. Yes, is the answer.
Wow.
Yeah.
I take heart in the fact that, as somebody else we listened to said, you know, if these are the measures they're having to take, it's kind of testimony to how strong the human spirit is and how strong consciousness is. I mean, it's infinitely powerful, isn't it? You know, it's the underlying force of all things. So the fact that there's such great measures is, you know, saying something.
I think we can say that the source, the great creator, did actually show its hand. The virus was not supposed, the information I have, the virus was not supposed to be released in China. Something intervened to make that happen. The virus was supposed to be released in the United States of America to destroy the Trump presidency and to destroy the economic aspect of America, and then go on to weaken the Western world. So it was unintentionally released in China, and therefore I believe that something, consciousness or source or the creator, moved to have that happen. Now, not such a good deal for those people in China, I'm afraid, but from the planet's perspective, that actually gave valuable time to the only force on Earth that can combat this satanic evil force, and gave those people enough time to work up a plan. And what you're seeing is a response which is not fear-led directly, but is working to some sort of plan. Yes, there's fear, of course there is, but there's more of a plan to it. So the destruction that those behind the virus wanted to see has not occurred. And you're right, it can't occur because we didn't, and we being all of us here on this planet, we didn't come here to get so far and then be squashed flat. We came here to be successful. And those that are behind from the good side have a great deal of investment in time and love and belief. They're not also going to let some small Kabbalistic group of crazies destroy it. So we are seeing now a much more in-your-face battle taking place.
We have a question from one of our listeners, Herman. Is this crisis going to trigger NESARA or GESARA, which are acronyms?
No.
Okay.
This crisis is already contained.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not actually familiar with those acronyms, so you might.
No, I'm not either.
No, could you actually explain that?
Well, my understanding is what we would call sort of a doomsday device. I don't mean a nuclear bomb that's laid in the earth, but my understanding of that is that when humanity is pushed to a certain extent, then both external forces and other forces, which are very hard to describe, kick in, and they're not reversible.
Right.
What I'm looking at is not at that level. It would not trigger any of those actions.
Okay.
Right. Okay then.
So these refer to some kind of financial reset.
Right.
Yes. It's not going to happen in the same way because what's happened is the president of America has actually given or is giving money directly to people. $1,200 if you earn $76,000 or less. Each month it'll be 1,200, and each child in America will get $500. So what's happened is that instead of giving money to the corporations purely, the American president is giving money to the people. Now that's not a reset in the true sense of the word, but it is a reset in the sense that the Federal Reserve Bank has first of all lost all confidence because of the amount of money it's printed. And secondly, the Federal Reserve is not allowed by law to directly fund private companies. It can become involved with other banks, but the only way you can do that is through the government, which is the Treasury. So in effect, the Fed, for the first time since 1912 or thereabouts, is now part of the government. So I can't say that President Trump runs the Federal Reserve. What I can say is that President Trump, if we can look on it in a very childlike way, President Trump is a member of the board now and has access. So the reset that everyone is talking about, no, this is not the situation for that. But there is a sort of a reset in the sense that the Federal Reserve now has to report to the Treasury, and the Treasury reports to the President.
Right. So that's a good thing for my lack of financial
yes, it
knowledge.
is a good thing, because if we think back to when the Titanic's sister ship was sunk, and you know, all those people who voted against JP Morgan's family, remember that the Morgans wanted to come off the gold standard and go to a paper printing system, and of course that meant that you couldn't have a Federal Reserve. And so very tragically, all those bankers who voted against coming off the gold standard tragically drowned, as they were intended to do, in the sister ship. It wasn't the Titanic, it was a sister ship. And therefore, very soon after that, matter of months, America came off the gold standard. So what we've done, what we've seen now, is almost 100 years has elapsed, a bit more, and we're now seeing a putting right of problems. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, and President Trump is independent, isn't he? From what we understand, he's independent of.
Yeah, broadly. He's broadly independent. I mean, remember his children, some of the children are Jewish, so there's a strong connection to Israel. There will be, because the boys are. But the difference is that, look, America's America, and there will always be what we in Britain would call a dodgy deal, but in America is normal. It's what you do, and the Russians do the same, the Chinese do the same. Everyone does it, just don't get caught. The difference is that President Trump is not a Satanist. President Trump has never abused a baby. President Trump has never done anything like that. And there are plenty of other people in very high positions who have done that. So I've always supported Trump, not because he's whiter than white or clearer than clear, but simply because he's not a Satanist. And we know he's not a Satanist because he's being attacked by the media, major media, left, right, center.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always had an inkling that he's one of the good guys, and they want him out because of that.
Yeah. What about the benevolent ETs? I just remember something being said about President Trump being protected or guided by benevolent ETs, and I think about the wider picture of you know, the ETs in our skies that are, you know, intervening. What do you have to say about that, Simon?
Well, President Trump's soul is part Palladian and part Andromedan. So he has the Palladian love, but the Andromedan force. Andromedans make very good sportsmen and women. You know, most athletes in the Olympic Games would be of an Andromedan or a Palladian type background. Palladian if you're going to win swimming contests, and Andromedan if you're going to win, you know, running or throwing javelins and stuff like that. So he's come from the warlike background, of the fifth dimensional warlike. He was chosen to do this. He knew exactly what he was into. His wife, the First Lady, didn't want him to be the president. She knew exactly what was going to happen. Been numerous attempts to kill him and her. And so, of course, he is the only thing that stands between the unimaginable evil and, you know, the good guys. The good guys believe in a constitution, and, you know, to put soldiers on the streets goes against their belief in the constitution. So they needed a politician. They needed somebody who was physically big enough to take all the nonsense, but also tough enough. And so they hit upon Trump, and the way they did it, I'm sure he won't mind saying, because he would just deny it anyway, was they just showed him in one evening all of the evil things that the other side had done, and said to him, do you want to have a chance to stop it? And they knew their man, because he didn't run out of the room screaming and shouting. He said, what do I have to do? And that was it.
So you think he's well aware of his soul ancestry and his soul's off-world origins and his life purpose or soul contract?
That's a really good question. I haven't met him and I haven't spoken to him. I think that he's aware of what his soul contract is, but I'm not sure that he fully understands who he is. He just knows he's a man on a mission, but perhaps doesn't know the history that's brought him to that point.
That could be said of a lot of star seeds, though, couldn't it?
Yeah, usually it's to protect the individual, because if the individual knows this when they're a child, that's when they're most susceptible, and that's when the satanic force can get to them. If it's hidden from their consciousness, then their mind cannot be read. Therefore, their impending threat to the evil forces in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time can't be calculated. So they get looked over. That's the whole point of it. And then they activate at a set time in their life when they should be in a position to protect themselves.
That makes sense.
When you refer to satanic forces, Simon, I'm assuming there are no, or maybe there are, I don't know, just to clarify, are there religious connotations attached to that, or are you referring to kind of the service to self, draconian ETs? I just want to be clear as to what that word means. Is it Satanism as a kind of the ideology, and or are you literally referring to Satan?
Right. It's quite interesting because both work and both don't work. If you can imagine, take out religion and take out anything else, just imagine a club. A club that doesn't exist as a building, but a club that exists as a frequency of energy. You know, if we humans look at a color chart and we see the colors blue and green and red, what we're seeing is frequencies.
Yeah.
And we have given words in different languages to those frequencies. So satanic Satanism only exists in the lower fourth dimension. It was not natural here, it was brought here. Murdering babies and all the rest of it is not natural to humans. We don't do it. It don't do it in the fifth dimension or higher, but it does occur in the lower fourth dimension. And so what we're talking about is a type of frequency which is like a narcotic. It's like cocaine. People can get into it and they get trapped and drawn into it. And we give it the word Satanism, and it's an unseen force that is projected. It's not artificial intelligence, although artificial intelligence has connected with it, but it is a form of demonic force which wishes to express itself through the human person.
Right.
So when we talk about Lucifer or Satan, we are, in the modern term, looking at an iconic God type figure to play with the church. But if we look at it much further back, we're talking about an individual who, as in the Bible, was a fallen angel. But today, if we understand Satanism as a group of humans who are controlled by a set of rules, and those set of rules are greater than themselves or their own family.
Right. Okay. Are you, sorry, go on,
And
Rachel.
those people that you're speaking of are the elite, the families, as they're referred to.
Well, there's a lot of elite that are good, who didn't accept the poison chalice. Basically, they'll use blackmail or threats or just bribery. But if you're very elite anyway, money isn't going to do anything for you. It's usually about making a person feel that they are better than anyone else. If you take somebody and you say, you were destined to lead, and you're going to be a member of a very, very select club, and you will be able to rule the world. And that's literally it. So these group of people who have risen to very high positions, as they've always done on this planet, now feel that they want to put into practice all of the plans over the last 2,000 plus years, because of human consciousness is outmaneuvering them. You know, human consciousness now is evolving at such a rate that these people are finding it very hard to take cover. You know, think of some of the things that have come to light recently, which have been buried for many, many years. This is not because somebody suddenly got a twinge of conscience and spoke. It's because the mass consciousness of humanity is beginning to out-evolve the lower fourth dimension, which means that what was hidden from us in the past is now open to us today. And so these bad people are finding that the corner that they sit in has become smaller and smaller and smaller. And hence these attacks that they're doing are pure desperation, as they no longer know what to do.
Yes, that's kind of the understanding we've come to, I think. And yeah, interesting. You mentioned something, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but it reminded me of something we've been watching actually on Gaia, and somebody called Sperry Andrews, who was talking about the collective shadow, which isn't a new concept, but you know, kind of re-exploring that and repackaging it or exploring that for, you know, the modern day. This idea that, you know, what's playing out is actually the collective shadow, and we're kind of, you know, here to kind of heal that and to integrate that and rise up to the fifth dimension, which is something that you mentioned in the email about the meditation, inviting people to meditation Sunday. So I wondered if you could elaborate on that and give your thoughts on that.
Well, I think some people who are not spiritual would be quite surprised that the meditation that I asked for was not a stop the virus.
Yeah, lots of those around, isn't there?
Yeah, I wanted to go beyond that to understand that that virus you see can only operate in this realm. That's the point here. If we raise the vibration of ourselves and the planet, it becomes very hard for the vibration, which is a lower fourth dimensional creation, to be able to sustain and to live. And I was trying to get people to focus on what on the heck we're here for. We're not here just to fight day after day after day. We're here actually to move forward and to take ourselves and the planet into a higher realm, because evolution is natural. You know, if we think about the Palladians, we talk about the Palladians, they're fifth dimension, but they were one time like us, third dimension. And they made it into the fourth, and they escaped that, and they made it into the fifth. Look at the Lyrans, they're in the sixth dimension, and we go up the ladder. So we're at very early stage. We're in the physical third, and we need to move through, and we will not have to stay in the fourth dimension, because uniquely the earth was trapped and is trapped still in an energy crafted from the lower fourth dimension. So when human consciousness breaks out of the third, it naturally then has to overcome the fourth, because it's the lower fourth that holds us in thrall. It's the fourth dimension, which is the prison. So when we break through it, we don't need to go to the fourth and experience life, because we've overcome it in this battle that we're fighting now. So we can leapfrog straight to the fifth. Now, there are a number of entities that understand that. The reptilians understand it, and the reptilians' plan was always to piggyback on humanity to overcome their problem, because they're in the lower fourth, and they hoped as humanity moved through very quickly, they could piggyback on. That's what all the grey hybridization is all about. That's why the greys have been busily hybridizing, simply because it's a way out of these creatures who are stuck in a dead end to escape. But what they don't get is that the consciousness and the great creator will only let something evolve that's won the right to evolve. So if you are service to self, you cannot evolve. So if somebody piggybacks on you and you go from the third to the fifth, they'll drop off. The only thing that's going to come through is when you understand the concept of service to others, and the reptilians don't. So they have spent thousands of years attempting to hybridize on this crazy version and vision that somehow that will give them the ability to get out of their prison. Whereas what they really needed to do was to change the whole way of their culture. But of course, that was impossible for them. So yeah, it's a very exciting time for all of us.
Yes, yeah. Certainly feels like, you know, a purpose. You know, I feel like a lot of us who are banding together, and those in the alternative community, those that are awakening, are here for a very definite purpose, and this is a massive leap for humanity, isn't it?
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I see that there's lots of comments on our over on our YouTube channel. I don't know if you want to just
Is Boris a good guy? Does he know about the Satanic Cabal? Is the question.
That's a good question.
A question.
Yes, Boris. What people don't know is that Boris had a plan with President Trump over 6 years ago, and it was always designed that Boris would try and be a prime minister. He couldn't say he was going to be, but the plan was that 6 years ago that he would be in a position to do it, so that he and Trump would both be world leaders. And that is why the two are very strong. And Boris wanted Great Britain to be much more closely aligned to the United States than to the European Union.
Okay, right. That's good to know.
Yes, that sounds very positive. Yeah, and just gleaming what I could from a news article recently, it sounded like he was quite reluctant to put the lockdown in place.
He wasn't keen on it. Unfortunately, the way the world is, he had to take the medical officer's advice, because if he did not, he would have been open to judicial review, and the government could have been taken to court and sued for anybody who died of the virus, because they would argue in court that because the Prime Minister did not follow medical advice, my grandmother died.
Right.
So by following the medical advice, he cannot be sued. That's exactly the reason why he's done what he's done. He's followed the medical advice, because at the moment on this planet, that is seen as the be all and end all. It's somebody in a white coat must be accurate, must know the truth. Therefore, we've got to do what they tell you. That's the way it stands at the moment. You know yourself in the court cases that a court is swayed by the expert witnesses. And so in any battle that goes on where expert witnesses are called, both sides of the court battle are looking for a witness with more letters after his or her name. So the longer they stand there and they can reel off the letters after their name, the more likely they are to be taken seriously. So that's why he did that. If he hadn't had to do that, I can assure you we'd have had a much more gentle type of response.
We've got a question from Ian in the audience on Zoom. Can you talk more about the demonic forces that are acting through the satanic politicians, and what or who is the great creator?
Ever since Babylon and before, the priesthood, or those who were left in charge of the planet, had to be controlled in some way. Therefore, the best way was, doing that type of puppet mastery trick, where the overarching energy controls a number of individuals, not just for its own pleasure, but to try to seek to push that community or that country in a particular way. And I'll give you an example of that. People who go to college or school and study history learn a whole series of events and dates, and they'll just accept it as it's given to them. But what they perhaps, well, I'm sure they don't get, is that that's all a construct. For artificial intelligence or demonic forces to really control the earth, they needed a set series of things to happen. So if we go back to the days of the Industrial Revolution, coal was mined, precious metals were mined, a great deal of things happened before the final element, which is the silicon chip. There's no surprise that it's silicon. And so all of the things that had to occur for that fantastic moment, I don't mean it was a good thing, I mean it was a fantasy moment in 1947 when the Roswell spacecraft crashed, and people still don't understand the huge impact of this, where that type of digital technology, that system that was delivered to the Earth, but couldn't have been back engineered unless everything else has occurred. And now we're at a point where we don't need to dig coal. We don't need to dig for precious metals in anything like the numbers. And so all of humanity that was created to be a slave workforce, not just 200,000 years ago when the Adamu were digging gold, but up to the 1950s, when this was the way forward. And now we have a population of goodness knows how many billions, and the elite say we no longer need them because we have now a technological device which can allow demonic energy to exist in a biological world. So thank you very much, human race. You've done all this work for us. We've gone from the Stone Age arrowhead, the flint arrowhead, the spear. We've gone from that to this huge technology, helped by the Orion Greys, who in 1947 deposited that advanced technology in New Mexico. But what they didn't calculate on was the determination of humanity, the consciousness of humanity, the planet herself, and the creator, who wasn't about to let go of something that had been created for good. So we have an evil force which is staring down a corridor and is totally oblivious to what is occurring either side of it, and has found itself outmaneuvered, because what's actually happened is the evil forces have been outmaneuvered because consciousness has evolved at a faster rate.
Yeah. Wanted to address a couple of things. One of them is the vaccine that is now being worked on, or so we're told, and the talk that the vaccine will actually be enforced upon people. Now, do you see that as a real reality? And if so, how can we actually stop that from happening, or how can we individually refuse to have the vaccine? That seems to be a big concern.
This exactly was the plan. The plan, don't just see this as a destruction of economies and removal of Trump. If we go forward to the view that these people think there's too many people on the earth, one of the ways is to force vaccinate. Will it happen? No, it won't, because certain world leaders won't let that happen. And you have to be very careful what words we use, because there are some words that we can use which are an offense, and you would have your whole site taken down. So we're going to be very careful what the words we use now. It was about a week ago, perhaps, I talked about if the vaccine came out with President Trump's face on it, I'm being quite serious, President Trump's face on it saying, I personally vouch for this vaccine, I'd be happy to take it. But what I said was, if this vaccine came from a certain other country, or it came from anywhere else, I wouldn't touch it at all. Now, it's quite interesting that you may be aware that a guy has been, has come out in public that a guy was trying to steal viruses from another like, COVID-19 from another laboratory. And this laboratory, not in China, this particular one, and the laboratory is locally called Israel. And that's quite interesting. So I actually said, if this is over a week ago, this other information only come out the last 2 days, but a week ago I said, if a particular antidote or a serum comes from this particular country, I wouldn't be taking it. We can't say that word now, because if we do and we put the two together, that's an offence actually under British law. So we can't do it. So we're being very careful, and we're doing it so that we're not, we can't be done. But I personally will not take any vaccine whatsoever unless President Trump comes up to me and says, it's fine, I vouch for it. Now, we know the bad guys have already got the vaccine, because when you're working in a biological lab, you run the two together. You always do that. just in case there's a terrible accident and the damn thing gets out, because you want yourself, your family and your friends protected. So on the left hand, they run the vaccine here, and on the right hand, they run the disease. And one shouldn't be too far ahead of the other. Now, what I can tell you, which you won't find, I did a podcast today, so I did talk to Connecting Consciousness people first, which is only fair. Oh, you will not find this anywhere else on the internet. And I'll tell you this, that the virus that was created in the Wuhan biological warfare laboratory was designed to be incredibly contagious, but was not designed to have a high death rate. I can tell you that, and I can't tell you who it was, but I can tell you that the guy who stole the vials out of the Wuhan laboratory was offered a staggering amount of money by an organization who wanted to buy it. They could not do the deal. They couldn't arrange the deal. And this guy, for whatever reason, decided that the deal was off. And the guy who wanted to buy it shot him and killed him. And as he fell to the floor, the vial containing the culture smashed. It's a stone floor in that marketplace. They're in the marketplace, that's a fact. Smashed and was released. But what I can tell you, which is not on the internet, is this organization wanted this culture because it had the most amazing capability to infect humans. And they wanted to add to it the second part, which was the lethal part, which would have made it not only hugely infectious, but would have really had a death rate of something around 10%, which is quite high. But because it broke when it did, only the first part that was released, which was a hugely infectious disease, but not with a staggering death rate. So that's why we didn't get that. And that is why the virus that the Iranians have been dealing with is a completely different virus than the one that the Chinese had to deal with. And I can also tell you that a virus was released in Britain in December. It is not the same. It's along the lines. It was much weaker because these satanic evil people wanted to hit the two countries they hated most, which is the United States of America and Great Britain, because Donald Trump was in one and Boris Johnson was in the other. But Britain was hit with a COVID type virus early December or late November, which wasn't anything like as powerful. And I hope as the truth comes out that they will be able to look and see how many people in Britain had a very unusual flu in December before this other one hit. So there's been a great deal going on that now is beginning to make it through to the light of day.
The pieces are falling into place.
Yes, definitely.
Did you have something else?
Yeah, I put a couple of notes down. I'm writing as I remember or think about things. Transhumanism has come up as another agenda in this whole saga. I don't know if we've actually got time to actually cover it in much detail. If you've got any quick thoughts on that,
it's gone off the boil now. It was being pushed, just like global warming was being pushed. When these evil people hit on a subject, they'll push, but because human consciousness has shut the door on them, they have to drop that one and run with another. And you know, if you have a good thing, you don't just make it flavor of the month and then drop it for something else. You only do it when you're trying different things. And so transhumanism was an object to attempt to get humanity to buy in to giving up its godlike creation, to give up its organic status, and to embrace that. But it's not worked. They haven't got the push that they got. And this is why we've got this virus situation, because it's the doomsday device, if you like. They've tried all their subtle tricks and it just hasn't worked. So they've now gone for the big stick. You know, it was either a dirty bomb, a dirty nuclear bomb, or a virus. And many people, not just myself, have been warning for many years that a virus followed by a miracle cure would be one of the ways the elite would attempt to deal with humanity.
Yeah, problem and solution kind of tactic. So yeah, you don't see a link between what's going on now and transhumanism, which is kind of
no, they haven't got enough time I'm being serious. I'm not joking. They haven't got enough time to say, let's turn you into half a robot. Then you can't be affected by the virus. If they could do that, they would. They could say to you, hey, we'll take your lungs out and we'll give you artificial lungs. The virus can't hurt you. They don't have time to do that.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a good question. It's a very good question.
I'd like to throw something into the mix, if I may, and get your perspective on this, Simon. I read something a few years ago on a website called Above Top Secret, which you may have heard of. It became known as the Interview with the Hidden Hand. Have you heard of this?
I'm aware of the website Above Top Secret, but I'm not aware of the Hidden Hand interview.
Very, very quickly, because I think it's kind of spreads a kind of holistic, positive light on all of this. Okay. That basically someone came onto the website.
The sound quality's gone. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Up there?
Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, it's probably because I'm waving the microphone around.
Shall I hold it while you're talking?
No. Yeah. So
I can't hear you.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you then.
Oh, okay. I'll just have to hold it here. Yeah. Basically, someone joined up on this website and posted claiming that they were a member of one of the 13 families of the elite.
Okay.
And that, long story short, they said that they were one of the laws that they were governed by was that every so often they had to make their plans available for the masses to inquire about. This is kind of like spiritual law. But it was only through asking questions that the information could be presented. It was never offered. So the upshot of this conversation, which took several months to unfold, was that what came to light was that behind the scenes, if you like, out of incarnation, all the various forces that come from the Creator are all working in unison on a kind of a higher level than we are capable of understanding while we're incarnate, to evolve and to grow and to head back towards oneness. And the so-called demonic forces that are very much in control of the earth at the moment were asked to come here to help evolve the human race by creating this kind of dualism and this kind of negative experience to accelerate our growth. So actually the draconian race, who in the Hidden Hand writings, they talk about the draconian race. Kind of their souls are actually here willingly to help with the evolution of the human race. Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
Nonsense.
You think that's nonsense?
Yeah, I do. The draconians are service to self. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't, if someone came to you and said, listen, will you do me a favor? I've got all these millions of people and I really would like you to be the bad guy, and you're going to help them. You would do it out of service to others, because you would say, I'll do it because I will help all these people evolve. The draconians are not like that. They're service to self. Their response would be immediately, what's in it for me? I'm just paraphrasing it.
Yeah.
The reptilian draconis royal line only exist to maintain the status quo and to maintain their own position. As one of them said to me when I was a little boy, wouldn't you like to be following us? We go from star system to star system. His words were bringing order where there is disorder, bringing truth where there are lies. What he was basically saying was that the draconists go from one planet to the next, conquering it and making the people subservient to them. That's exactly what's happened to Earth. Nobody needed to invite them to come here and do it. They came here because humanity was naive. It was created out of love, and foolishly didn't see any evil in anything. So when these rather nasty people turned up, we fell for the story. It's not unlike white settlers going to Africa or to South America and saying, I'll give you this lovely bowl of glass, worthless beads. You just sell me your village. And that's exactly what occurred. And that is why native peoples are penalized, because they come from a heart space, whereas those who come from a mechanized world are controlled by the system. So no, I don't accept that at all. This is not the only planet that is under control by negative forces who never did it to help anybody. They did it to aggrandize themselves. Now, are you saying to me that sometimes people will come here to play a role? Then I will accept that. But how could a good person, how could a good person accept a role that brings pain and death on others? You couldn't do it. If you're a good person and your service to others, you wouldn't say, well, I'll kill 50 people because that'll give the others the message to do this, that, and the other. Well, that's no nonsense.
I may not have done what I read service in.
No, but I think you have, and I think that I'm afraid it's a very new age type of vision. You know, I get very cross. I don't often get cross. I get very cross with new age supposedly psychics who say to somebody, oh, you came here to be abused. You came here to be raped as a 3-year-old child. It's all part of your learning. No, you didn't. What happened was you came here as a good person. The evil forces detected you and they did everything they could to stop you becoming the good person that you plan to be. Nobody comes here to say, cut my head off, do this to me, do that to me, because it's a lesson. No, you come here to do good.
Okay.
But what we can say is that once that experience has happened, we do have the power to overcome it in ourselves, to heal ourselves. We have immense power to change things like we've explored with meditation. So although it's not intentional to come into life and choose to be abused or any of those things, we can say that going forward from that, we can become stronger, we can overcome, and we can prevail.
We can. The only difficulty is that we have to reincarnate, and time is of the essence. So I think that those of us who are on the planet now and are awake and aware have been to school. We've done all that. This is the moment we don't need to learn anymore. We need to put into practice what we have been trained to do and what we believe to do. And the vast majority of the human race who are not the actors on the stage, but they are there to observe and learn because they are the group consciousness. You know, there's just a few thousand people on the planet who are at the level of awareness and understanding, but without winning the hearts and minds of the vast majority, we won't do it, because you have to have a critical number, this critical balance that pushes the planet up. You know, the planet is not going to evolve if 500 people say, hallelujah, I see the light, and 8 billion people say, I'm quite happy sitting here, thank you.
Yeah. So how do you see things playing out ultimately, Simon, from these events that are happening at the moment? Do you see us sort of being able to ascend, as it were, and create a 5-dimensional reality, or enter into a 5-dimensional reality? How do you see this playing out?
In the short term, I see it as a very close fought battle. In the medium term, I see it as a healing and coming together of a lot of things, and then the final output, and I'll give you a time scale in a minute, I know that's what you're asking in a strange way, is an advancement to the 5th dimension. I think from start to finish, 25 years. I think that within 25 years, we will definitely be in a position that is nothing like we're in at the moment. There are people already who are seeing glimpses of the 5th dimension. Literally, they're just going into a shop, coming out, and suddenly, for a split second, they're not on this world. Well, they are, but they're not. And this is happening more and more and more as the barrier between these dimensions is being stretched like a piece of cellophane that's being pulled. We are seeing more and more. So well, we didn't come here to fail. We did not come here to fail. We came here to do what we always said we would do, which is advanced through to the 5th dimension. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Although it's a damn difficult time, it's going to be successful. It has to be successful. And I've always believed that, not because I'm desperate, but I believe it because that's what I've been shown.
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we have some characters who I recognize up on the board there.
Oh, good.
Are they going to say hello?
Yeah, feel free.
People are welcome to before we close.
You can unmute yourselves.
We should.
You can actually speak.
Yeah, we can open the floor now if people want to.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah. Alicia's chat on here. Let's see what it says. Oh, just hello, Simon.
Okay.
Hi, Simon.
Hello. Lovely to.
I just started to catch up like half an hour ago, and I think it's amazing to have an interview with you. So I'm happy that Rachel and David managed to get an interview with you. So great information. Thank you. Thank you as always. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Great, that's a lovely comment.
Yeah.
Ian says, when can you predict the miracle cure to be used or given to us, the people? Is there a plan? Oh, did you get that?
No, I had a miracle cure. What's?
Yeah, it's in the text.
What text?
Oh, do you see it? Okay.
Oh, on Zoom, there's a chat.
Technology on this planet you might think is very good. To me, it's incredibly primitive. How do I make it work? I should be able to make it work with my mind. I have to move the arrow, do I?
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be an icon at the bottom that says chat.
Chat. Okay. Yeah.
Not quite 5th dimensional yet.
Oh,
no.
No, it's the 4th dimension. You can do that in the 4th. You don't.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I've got this thingy, but okay, talk about the demonic forces, predict when the miracle cure will be used or given to us, the people. Right, I don't understand what Ian means by the miracle cure.
I think he's referring to, you used that terminology when you were referring to the vaccine.
Yeah, I think we're talking about
right, so about the vaccine.
Coronavirus.
Yes.
A straightforward doctor would tell you that the vaccine is 1 year, 8 months away. A military bacteriovirusologist would say that it's between 6 months and a year away. I think within 3 months, because they already got it. The question is, who is going to be allowed to bring that to the public? If the good guys can take control of the planet, then we don't need it. We just don't need it, because it will be dealt with. But if the bad guys stay in control, we should expect to see that in 3 months.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound surprising. And as you said earlier, Alicia says this, the Israeli lab said they have, we know that the Israeli lab has a patent or information on this vaccine. So yeah. Yes, okay. A question about UFOs. You're saying that there's going to be more UFO activity in the skies.
Yes, definitely.
Is that because good guys up there, to put it in very simple terms, are trying to fight it out and intervene?
Both aspects of the good and the bad are taking a great interest in what happens on Earth, because if humanity breaks free, then it's the end of a cycle. It's the end of an oversight from a very negative force, and their concern is they still have connections inside the Earth, and if they were to lose control of the surface of the Earth, then they have lost control of inside the Earth, because as it stands at the moment, the latest figures I have are only about 25%, maybe 30%, between 25 and 30% of underground bases have been cleansed. There are still a great number of negative forces embedded in bases, and if the evil forces were to lose control of the planet and the space above the planet, then they've lost control within the planet. And that's important simply because it's very difficult to create a 4th dimensional environment for a 4th dimensional entity to live on the planet, but it exists inside the planet. So inside the Earth, there are chambers and environments that replicate a 4th dimensional existence, and that's what allows some of these creatures to live inside the Earth. Because remember, many of them do not breathe oxygen.
We have a question from Robert Martins, which you might be able to see now. You've got the chat screen open, but he says, if Boris is on the good side, why does the UK Coronavirus Act appear to be so draconian?
For the reasons that I gave earlier, that if he doesn't do it and follow the medical advice, then he could probably be taken to the Court of Human Rights or the Hague Convention or whatever it is. So simply because that he has to be seen to be following medical advice, but it actually plays very nicely because with the vast majority of the British public locked down, it allows both from an artificial intelligence, and I don't mean a negative way, for an artificial intelligence and a traditional spy system to try to work out where certain targets are, certain individuals who are embedded in government in certain places who are not trying to run, because to run would immediately admit that you're guilty. So these assets are staying in their position, and under a lockdown it's going to be easier with face recognition cameras, which the Metropolitan Police have been rushing into put in, and nobody understood why that was, or number plate, license plate recognition. So I think it's fairly a good bet to say that a lot of these bad people can be tracked quite easily with a lockdown.
Yeah. Okay. Alicia, she says, still going on the Boris subject, why has Boris signed 5G into law while we are all distracted by the virus? How can we overturn this?
I think that you'll be very interested to see in a few months to come, there's going to be a vote in the House of Commons which allows the Chinese company to have 35% of the control. Expect to see them lose that vote and the Chinese to be thrown out of the 5G contract. Also expect to see some technologies introduced which mitigate the 5G. The only country I have no concern about is America. I was very clear from the information that I was given that that not yet, but in the end of this year, what the Americans call the fall of this year, there should be technology in place that allows 5G the incredible bandwidth it's offering, but takes out the harmful part of it. And I think a lot depends if President Trump is re-elected on November the 3rd.
That's interesting, because it probably might sound crazy to some people, but I had this kind of almost download that there was some technology to offset it, to actually take away the frequency from the airways, but still be able to transmit.
I'll let you know something. Why not? When America got embroiled in this argument with Mexico, and they were going to build a wall, and it was always called a wall, and it was all about keeping immigrants or migrant workers out. That's absolutely nothing to do with it. It was never going to be a wall. It was always going to be steel girders. And for the last, excuse me, the last 3 years, a very special process has been used. I'm not a scientist, but in terms of the molecular structure of the metal, and that is why it's not a wall, it's a fence. And I can tell you that if you fire a particular wave at this fence, it will resonate back. And that's why I have no concern for 5G in America.
Okay. So we'll be seeing some kind of screening or filtering technology hitting the market.
Right. The technology that we have in Connecting Consciousness have been promoting through the Swiss scientist Jacques Bauer and the Professor Lakiewicz, which was called him Professor Laki from Serbia, is not a barrier or a screen, but it converts the frequency. Do you want to say hello? This is Eric. Hello.
Oh.
This is Eric. He's a Norwegian forest cat. He's quite young, so he's.
Oh, I love that breed. They're very friendly, aren't they?
So the technology that we have been promoting, which is these sticks, do not barrierize or block. They transmute the frequency of 5G or any microwave energy into something that's much less harmful for the human body. We're very proud, and I was very proud to be associated with it, because to my knowledge, it is the only anti-5G product on the market in the world that has a professor, a regular white-coated man, a professor who has got his professorship in quantum physics, who has actually designed it. And Professor Lakievich had to sell his house to fund it because the establishment refused to support him. Of course they refused, because he had a device which mitigates 5G. So he sold the house, the money he used to get this product, and we're very proud to be associated with him on that.
That's a very good soul.
Yeah.
And if you have any information on this product, would be very interesting.
You just go to my website, simonparks.org. There's a link there. You click on that, you go straight through to the scientists themselves, and you don't pay me. You buy it straight from them. But they came to me and they said that all of the major distributors wouldn't touch it because clearly it was anti the establishment. As a consciousness organization, would I be prepared to put my love behind it, the organization behind it? I said, absolutely, I would. And I've met these people, I've spoke to them. I know that they're very good people, and the product works. And I have one here, and I strongly urge anyone to try and obtain one if you can. And we're not running the offer now, but as a thank you to my organization, for a period of time, anybody who bought, I'll hold it up and show you in a minute, anyone who bought one, it was buy one, get one free. If a person from my organization bought one, they had to receive a new one. I'll just pull this out and show you. It's, I don't know if you can see it, it's got St. George and the dragon etched on it, but the one that everyone will get is the logo of Connecting Consciousness. So we're going to have our logo etched onto these, and that's free. So anyone who bought one over the time period, and we did advertise it as best we could on my website, we'll get that. So look, there are lots and lots of people out there fighting the system, and there are lots of people like free energy. You know, it's a nonsense. Lots of people have reinvented free energy. There's hundreds, thousands of people who have invented free energy. The problem is getting it to the marketplace. That's the point. So when we have a very, very important piece of kit like this, in order to get it to the marketplace, you have to have a vehicle, and in our case it's Connecting Consciousness. You have to have a vehicle that is not controlled by the elite, is not part of the system, and the product is not tainted. Anybody who says at the moment they have got free energy and they're going to post it to you, do you really think the elite would let somebody send a real product that can give you free energy? Of course they won't. We have to overturn the system before free energy is available to all. And so in a very small way, this anti-5G stick is the beginnings of humanity saying, we don't want the road that you've given us. We want to create our own road. Thank you very much. I just plug it back in now because I get headaches if I don't put it in now. Because it's
We'll look into that and write up a post on our channel about it on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I feel like it might be time to wrap up soon. We've been going for an hour and a half.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. Been really enjoying this conversation. It's covered so many bases. To summarize, really, to end on a high note, the things that we can do now, things that you talk about overturning the system. Obviously, the white hats are that they're doing their job, but what can we do as people now? We can meditate on the spiritual level, the energetic level. We can protect ourselves, as you've shown with a product in place for 5G. We can refuse the vaccine and take that brave step, because obviously there's going to be laws in place potentially to make it obligatory. But
let's hope not.
Yeah, let's hope not. What else can we do, Simon?
Right. Well, if we accept there's an unseen, let's accept that there's something other than just a physical world, and if we accept that we're not powerless. You know, so many times people say, oh, I'm just on my own, what can I do? I'm just one person. That's so defeatist. What's really important is that there is a real possibility of an internet shutdown coming before Easter. It could be anything. I've been told anything between 3 days and 5 days. I've been told that in America they probably won't even have their landline, but in Great Britain we will probably keep our landline, but all the phones will be turned off, internet will be turned off. Now, if that does occur, then I think the most important thing is people not to panic, but to understand that it is not a Kabbalistic, it's not a negative. So the good guys are actually doing it. There are what we will call dark elements within the internet. And I don't mean individuals, I mean stations, AI, and they have to be disconnected. They have to be taken out. And a lot of the white hats want to do things and they don't want the public's attention. So what we can do is actually, if that happens, is not immediately go into that place of fear, but to actually say, I'm strong. I believe that I will come out of this, and I believe humanity will come out of it. I'm not going to be reduced to a trembling jelly.
Yeah.
There should also be announcements on your cell phones, on your mobile phones, and on the radio from government or white hats. I don't mean just to, playing the national anthem in Great Britain or the Star Spangled Banner in America. There should be some very interesting, helpful comments being made, which will explain a lot to people. That's if they go down that road. We're by no means certain, but if that is a happen, particularly young people who they tell us they can't live without their cell phones. Okay, of course they can. And I don't want those people to immediately go into a place of panic and fear. I'm of a generation, I remember not having a cell phone until the last 30, 40 years or whatever. So what we can do is actually stay strong. And if you can communicate with someone who's like-minded, support each other. And also, actually, if you have a neighbor who is disabled and is not able to look after themselves, for goodness sake, find out what you can do to help them. If they need some food, please do that. Let's think about service to others and not let's hide in the kitchen until the virus goes away. Go out there and see what you can do to help people. I don't want you to put yourself at risk, but go out and do something positive and help people. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, whatever happens, I think that's important to remember. In the short term, we can do a lot for each other and keep ourselves strong. In the longer term, I think we are definitely on the upward trend. We are going to create a better place for us all and evolve in a good way. So let's continue to strengthen our conscious connection, to use that term. And
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's lovely to be with you. I know you two guys are incredibly knowledgeable, and I'm always very cautious because there are a lot of people over an audience who've been with you years, and there are some people who've just joined like yesterday. So it's always good, and you've always been very good as a couple in terms of trying to get information that is interesting for a wide range of people. So I love being on your show. I love it because it's an opportunity to talk to a wider range of audience. Sometimes some people, it's just down one very narrow, all they want to talk about is the reptilians or flying saucers. And the reality is that is interesting, but what's more important is what's happening tomorrow. What's happening to us? What do we need to be aware of? Current news, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Simon.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Very kind. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance. I mean, I recognize, Herman and Mel, and I see people there that I know, and it would have been nice to have a chat with them. But listen, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight and joined.
Yes.
And for the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care. God bless.
Yeah, it's been brilliant, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
Take care. Go.
Okay.
Kill the live stream.